Hi guys, it's Friday afternoon, the weekend is finally here, and for me, of course, that means getting back to fixing up Athena. If you're new to my channel, this lovely looking hunk of fiberglass here is Athena. She's a 38-foot sailboat. Right now, I'm in the middle of a somewhat extensive refit, but in a few years, my girlfriend and I hope to be cruising the world aboard Athena. Speaking of my lovely girlfriend, in a little over 40 days, I'm gonna be back in LA visiting Ava. And while I'm there, I'm gonna host a little meetup for the channel. I haven't found a location yet, but the date is set. It's gonna be Sunday, March 18. If you think you're gonna show up to the meetup, I'd really appreciate it if you could just let me know down in the comments. That way I can get an idea of how many are gonna show up. But yeah, let's get back to the refit. A little earlier this week, my friendly neighborhood marine mechanic swung by and lent me a hand removing the engine from the engine compartment. And here is how that went. The sail drive on my engine supports the aft end of the engine. The engine itself is secured only with 2 engine mounts. In each of those 2 are 2 bolts. So the first step was to remove 4 bolts. On the back of the engine there were 6 bolts securing the sail drive to the engine. Access was a little bit awkward, but it wasn't bad. With the engine loosened, we carefully lifted it and placed a heavy wooden board underneath the sump. The goal was to be able to drag the engine off the engine bed onto the cabin sole. The wooden board we used was a little bit too thick, so we struggled with the engine for a few minutes to get it to let go of the sail drive, but in the end it just slid right out of there onto a piece of cardboard, and then it was easy to drag it across the cabin sole. Next up, we had to remove the sail drive. For us to be able to do that, we first needed to remove the prop, which turned out to be a little bit difficult. But after a quick bit of drilling and snapping a stainless steel bolt, the prop came off without any more problems. Before removing the sail drive, we wanted to drain the oil, so we pulled the plug, and of course draining the oil is a lot quicker to do if you also remove the dipstick. As you can see here, the oil is nice and clear, meaning there's no water in there, which is certainly a good thing. Now it's just a matter of loosening all the bolts securing the seal around the sail drive and then just lift the sail drive out of there. It was a little bit difficult to get it out of there because of the tank taking up a lot of space, but overall it was pretty easy. And now here she lies, my spiffy looking Volvo Penta d2-40F. Complete with a 130S sail drive. As far as the reason for removing the engine and the sail drive, well, that is right here. This part of the sail drive pokes out the bottom of the hull, so there's a great big gaping hole in the bottom of the hull, and this seal is what plugs up that hole and keeps the boat from sinking. As you can see, this seal is still absolutely pristine. There are no cracks, no bubbles, no issues at all, so I doubt it's strictly necessary for me to replace this now, but Volvo does recommend that you replace these every 7th year, so that's what I'm gonna do. This seal is from 2009, so it is due to be replaced, but even if that hadn't been the case, I would probably still have done it now because the boat is up on the hard, and this is not really something you can do with the boat in the water, so it makes sense to take care of it now. Sure, I could have replaced the seal without pulling the engine all the way out, but I'm a glass half full kind of guy, so I chose to look at this as an opportunity to spiffy up the engine compartment. And that is exactly what I'm gonna get started on this weekend. Some new sound insulation, maybe a bit of paint and a new diesel tank, and this will look like $1,000,000. While I'm at it, I think it makes a lot of sense to just try and rethink this entire area, because the saltwater strainer and the diesel filter and the water separator, I think I'd rather have them located here, and over here I think that makes for easier access, but yeah, we'll get back to that. I am super excited about this project. I think that's going to turn out to be one spiffy engine compartment, and just to tear out that old sound insulation is going to be awesome, and I can't wait to get started. Good morning, guys. It is Saturday morning. I had some boring non-boat related stuff to deal with yesterday, so I had to cut it short, but let's go ahead and get started. The very last thing I did yesterday before leaving the boat was just to tuck in the engine so that the dust I'm going to be generating over the coming weeks when I spiffy up the engine compartment doesn't get all over the engine. It is a little bit of a pain that I have to remove the companionway steps to get good access to the engine compartment, but that is just the way Athena is set up. It's annoying because without the steps there, it is pretty difficult to get out of the boat. And then also, where do I put this thing? It seems no matter where I put this thing, it's gonna be in the way. But yeah, I think that's an issue I can't really solve. But if one of you guys have a good idea, just go ahead and drop me a comment down below. I guess there's not a lot to this. It is just a matter of getting started removing all of the old stuff. And why don't I start by removing the old seawater strainer? It looks like the mount for that seawater strainer is just secured by these two bolts. This is certainly a very sturdy solution, but it should also be easy to remove. That is one doohickey removed. Quite a few to go. Next up, let's take care of the exhaust that's big and bulky and kind of in the way. Next up, this old fuel filter also needs to go. Now let's just make absolutely sure that, yes, this is shut off, because I think there's a little bit of diesel left in the tank, but we'll see later today. The tank was cleaned in 2009, and this filter only has about 100 hours on it. That's how long we ran the engine on the way home from Scotland. But yeah, this is certainly nice and clean. That is to say, there is no water or crud visible in the water separator. This green hose is for the manual bilge pump that's controlled out in the cockpit. But I think there might be a better way to run this hose. And also, I think it's pretty old, so let's just get rid of this. See, having the sail drive out is pretty handy for discarding of old hose. The rest of this is probably just easiest to pull out of here with the exhaust hose here. But look what I've found over here. I was wondering how this tank was secured, but as you can see here, it's bolted in there, and there's one of these on the other side too. That seems pretty sturdy. This, on the other hand, does not seem very sturdy. I don't know if these halogen fire extinguishers are actually allowed aboard pleasure vessels here in Denmark, but I'll have to look into that. Either way, this thing is probably due to be serviced at the very least. This is for the anchor windlass, and this is most definitely getting upgraded to a slightly larger gauge wire. And now I can remove this. This cable here, that was for the power for the SSB, and it's kind of a special cable, I think. I am solely basing that on the fact that it feels very well shielded, but let's pull it out of here and take a look. I'm not going to lie, I am pretty excited about getting this mess cleaned up, but let's just stick to the engine compartment for now. There are no markings on this cable, so I can't really tell what it is, which is a shame because it feels kind of funny, but then looking at the shielding on here, it doesn't look like anything too special. Like I said, this is the power cable for the SSB. Does that require some kind of special shielding or a special cable of any kind? I don't know, but perhaps one of you guys can let me know down in the comments. Progress is certainly being made. I think maybe the next thing I want to remove is this old sound insulation. This looks like two pieces of foam with some lead stuck in between them. No doubt this is awesome at sound dampening, but oh, so crusty. Even the surface of it looks kind of, well, not great. But yeah, this mold, or maybe it is just salt deposits, I don't know, but it sure as heck looks pretty nasty. There's not a lot of stuff left here in the forward part of the engine compartment, but there is something I want to deal with. And that is this coppered tubing here. This is for the propane stove in the galley. And I would love to run this outside of the engine compartment, and I would love to do a better job of securing it. Now did I remember to shut off the propane? I'm just kidding. This thing has been disconnected in both ends for about 1.5 years, so I think it's pretty safe to go ahead and cut it. On either side of the engine compartment there are two little strips of wood with a bunch of holes in them, and right here you can see a cable tie. Those are used to secure wires, hoses, and that coppered tubing, but I think I can come up with a better solution than this, so let's go ahead and remove them. Uh-oh, it's surprise time. I just saw a drop of water coming from up there. Yep, that most certainly is soaking wet. I think it's a safe bet the core here in the cockpit sole is soaking wet. It looks like they've plugged up quite a sizable hole there at some point. That is a very weird location. The hole is right here, or used to be right here. I can't think of a single thing that would make sense to have a hole there. Oh, well, maybe they drilled a hole here to lift the engine at some point. No, that's still off to the side. I have no idea what that hole was used for. Let's ignore that mystery hole for now. Over here is where the dyno plate for the SSB was located. And I think there's some kind of backing plate here. This is the connection to the tuner, I'm guessing. What? What are the chances of that? Now, if I could just get this valve here removed and this piece of plywood, I should be able to start loosening the diesel tank. Well, whoever put this in here really didn't want anybody to remove it. Ah, ta-da! Oh, I think there is quite a bit of diesel left in the tank. So how do I get that tank drained completely? I've got a bunch of this tubing left over from drying out the hull this summer. Maybe if I heat this, I can expand it enough so that it can slide onto this 8mm copper tubing and then just drain the tank out the hole here into some jerry cans. Let's give it a go. Now, before anybody gets nervous, this is diesel, so I'm not concerned about blowing myself up. Well, that should be good enough for government work. Now, let's open this and see if there's actually any diesel in the tank, because judging the level on this thing is really hard. Huh. That is quite a bit of diesel. I did not do a good job of emptying out this tank. Let's just grab a little sample out of this diesel here to see what it looks like. There is a little bit of sediment in here, but no doubt about it, this is diesel. To stem the tide temporarily, I've just put a clamp on the hose, but let's go ahead and remove that and get the diesel into those jerry cans. Actually, you know what? Let's do a small little experiment first. Okay, filling that took over a minute. That's under half a liter, meaning it should take at least 40 minutes to fill one of those. So I guess I can just leave them unattended for like half an hour and then pop down and check on them. This is going to be a little bit of a tedious process, but I'm guessing the amount of diesel that's left in the tank here aboard Athena will keep me warm aboard Obelix for maybe 3 weeks. So that's pretty nice. In the interest of speeding up that otherwise pretty tedious process, I figured out what I did wrong the last time I tried emptying out this tank. The hose I was using coiled up inside the tank, and that caused that bit of diesel to be left in there. I've tried remedying that by tying a stick to the hose to make sure it's at the absolute bottom of the tank. Yep, here comes the diesel. This, needless to say, is a lot faster. It'll take roughly a minute to fill one of those jerry cans. Yep, this one is full to the brim. The diesel tank should now finally be completely empty. Okay, I think I'm finally ready to start seeing if I can move this thing. But first, I am gonna have to get rid of the hoses for the bilge pump and the exhaust. So, into the deep I go. As you might be able to get a sense of, it's pretty cramped in here, but that is the diesel tank, and I think I've disconnected everything, so I should be ready to start yanking on it now. Actually, let's take a quick little detour. I've pulled up the teak that covered the cockpit sole. Well, no wonder there's that leak inside of the engine compartment. Someone drilled a hole here and tried plugging it up with a piece of wood that's way smaller than the hole and didn't bother to glass the top of it. So, yeah. Oh, and look, there's another hole here and one over here. I didn't know about these 3 holes. That's such a weird thing to do to a boat. But yeah, it doesn't matter. It's an easy fix. It's something I can fix when Athena's back in the water. I am almost out of daylight for today, so I'm gonna wait until tomorrow to start yanking on that diesel tank. Good morning, guys. It is a windy Sunday morning. I apologize if the mic picks up the tarp that's over the cabin top flapping around. There is not a lot I can do about that, so let's just go ahead and get started. The last thing I did last night was just to wipe down this area here, just to get rid of the worst of the grime, and I think it's already starting to look a lot better. Anywho, let's just jump right in and take a stab at dragging this diesel tank out of here. It might be as simple as just loosening these and just start pulling on the tank, but I doubt it. I had to get a wee bit aggressive with an angle grinder and cut 2 bolts that secured the aft end of the tank, but I think this might be it. For helvede og satan da også. Ah, yes. The tank won't actually fit through this opening, and why would it? If it simply just slid out of there, that would just make life too easy. It's wedged in there pretty good, and before anybody starts commenting about me just being able to cut that piece of wood and the piece of wood over here, that wouldn't actually work because the tank would simply just get stuck on the door frames. I've taken a close look at this, and there is just no way for me to get this tank out of here without cutting it in half. But that's okay, because I was gonna get a new tank anyways, because I need just a little bit more room in the engine compartment for some new filters and some new pumps. But we'll get back to that in one of the upcoming videos. I don't want to be rude, but in last weekend's video, some people took offense or got upset with me for cutting that stainless steel tank in half. Seeing as I'm just about to do the same thing again this weekend, I figured I would just say that this is my boat. It is my choice if I want to cut those stainless steel tanks in half. Just do yourself a favor and don't get upset about me doing stuff like that. I don't think that's worth it. Ta-da! Old diesel tank all gone. There's still the small matter of a ton of hoses though. It is pretty cramped in here. Perhaps next weekend I should dust off my old GoPro so that I can better show you guys this lovely dungeon. With most of the clutter in there out of the way, let's just dive in and see if we can give you guys a good look at all the griminess. Whatever this stuff is, it looks pretty nasty. I don't know if this is mold, but it kind of looks like it. So the good news is there wasn't any really nasty surprises waiting for me in here in the engine compartment, but yeah, it is pretty grimy and easily worth the trouble of cleaning it up a bit. Having said that, there is a potential issue down here with some wet plywood, but I think we'll take a closer look at that next week. Overall, I'm happy with the progress I've made this week, and I am still very excited to spiffy up the engine compartment. I was going to answer a few questions from some patrons in this video, but my back is starting to act up, so I just want to head back to Obelix and relax for a bit. But we'll get to those questions in next weekend's video. Oh, and remember, if you think you might show up to the meetup in LA on March 18, just drop me a comment down below so that I can get an idea of how many people are going to show up. And other than that, yeah, I think that is going to be it for this video. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!